My name is Miriam. I'm standing in my mother's backyard, the air thick with tension. The once joyous birthday party has turned into a battlefield. My sister's husband, Victor, stands across the table, his face pale with shock and anger. I've just laid out the evidence of his theft of $47,000 from my horse rescue ranch's operating account. It all started long before this fateful day. I didn't grow up in a family with a horse-loving tradition. I was born in a small coastal town, the daughter of a fisherman and a schoolteacher. After college, I got a job as a junior accountant at a local firm. The work was steady, but every weekend, I'd volunteer at a nearby equestrian center. I found a kind of peace with the horses that I couldn't find in the world of numbers. At 26, I came across a rundown piece of land with a dilapidated barn. The price was low enough that my savings and a small loan from a local credit union allowed me to buy it. I remember that first winter vividly. There were 4 rescue horses that I'd taken in from a neglect situation, and the barn had no proper heating. I learned everything from fence repair to equine nutrition on my own, mostly from online resources and the advice of an old vet in the area. Over the years, my ranch, Sea Breeze Rescue, grew. I was boarding 22 horses, running a small farm store selling handmade leather goods and preserves, and had even started an equine therapy program for veterans dealing with PTSD, all free of charge. Every night, I'd sit at my desk and reconcile the day's numbers, a habit that would prove crucial later. My sister, Hannah, is 3 years younger than me. We were inseparable as kids, sharing a bedroom and a love for the ocean. But as we grew older, our paths diverged. Hannah was the social one, always surrounded by friends. I was the one who took on the responsibility of helping our parents with finances when they faced tough times. When Hannah was 23, she met Victor. They got married after only 6 months of dating. Our mother, who was a kind-hearted but overly lenient woman, didn't object. I remember seeing her looking worried the night before the wedding, but she never said a word against it. Hannah had 2 kids quickly, a girl named Amelia and a boy named Ethan. She stayed at home to take care of them while Victor worked in real estate. Every time I visited, the conversations became more strained. Victor would often make snide remarks about my ranch, saying things like, "Must be nice to play with horses all day while the rest of us work hard." I always brushed it off, thinking he was just jealous. A year and a half before our family reunion, Victor called me one evening. He said he needed $2,500 for a car repair. His car's engine had failed, and the mechanic wouldn't release it without payment. I transferred the money right away, thinking it was a small help that I could offer to my family. But he never paid me back. I brought it up once at a family dinner, and he just laughed it off, saying, "We're family, Miriam. Don't be so stingy." Our mother nodded in agreement, and Hannah looked down at her plate. I decided not to push it, as I didn't want to cause a rift in the family. Then, in early May, my mother called with the idea of a family reunion. She wanted it to be a big event, with all our relatives coming to the ranch. I said yes, as I always did. I spent 3 weeks preparing for it. I rented extra tables and chairs, hired a local catering service, strung lights across the barn entrance, and set up pony rides for the kids. The whole thing cost me about $3,500, but I didn't mention it to anyone. On the day of the reunion, it was a beautiful sunny day. The yard was filled with laughter and the smell of barbecued food. I was running the farm store register on my tablet, the same one I used for the business app. Around 2 p.m. One of the horses spooked at a child's balloon and kicked its stall door. My stable hand, Jake, radioed me. I set the tablet on the counter and asked Victor, who was standing nearby with a beer in his hand, to watch the register for a few minutes. He smiled and said, "Sure thing, Miriam. Go take care of your horses." I was in the barn for about 8 minutes. When I came back, Victor was behind the counter, scrolling through the tablet. He quickly looked up and said he was just checking if the card reader was synced, but the card reader was sitting on the counter, unplugged. I glanced at the tablet screen and saw that the banking app was still open in the background. I'd been logged in earlier to pay a vendor and hadn't logged out in the rush. I closed the app and set the screen lock, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Later that evening, while everyone was having cake, Hannah pulled me aside. She asked me how much it really cost to run the ranch every month. I gave her a rough estimate of about $7,000 to $8,000, including feed, vet bills, Jake's salary, and utilities. She nodded slowly and said, "That's a lot." The way she said it made me feel like she was calculating something, but I pushed the thought away. After everyone left, I cleaned up the ranch by myself. By 9:30 p.m. I was at my desk, reconciling the day's numbers. When I opened the banking app on my laptop, I couldn't believe my eyes. The operating account balance was just $3,347. The day before, it had been $50,347. 3 Zelle transfers had gone out that afternoon, $17,000 at 2:14 p.m. $15,000 at 2:22 p.m. and $14,000 at 2:31 p.m. Totaling $46,000. The recipient initials were V. H. I called the bank's after-hours line. The automated system confirmed the transfers were completed. A live agent told me that since the transactions originated from a registered device on my account, they couldn't reverse them without a formal dispute. Filing a dispute on a Saturday night meant I'd have to wait until Monday. I changed all my passwords and added extra security layers, but it was too late. The money was gone. Sitting in the barn that night, between my first rescue horse, a one-eyed mare named Luna, and the feed room door, I felt a deep sense of despair. That $3,347 was only enough for 3 weeks of feed for the 22 horses. After that, I'd have to start deciding which horses to send away. The next morning, I called Victor. He answered the phone cheerfully, talking about how great the party was and how much Amelia loved the pony rides. I didn't waste any time. I asked him about the 3 Zelle transfers totaling $46,000 from my business account. There was a long silence, and then he let out a snort. He said they needed the money to catch up on some bills and the mortgage. He promised to pay it back when he closed a big deal, but I told him it was theft. His tone changed, and he started to get defensive, saying they needed it more than I did and that I owed Hannah. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking with anger and the realization that there was no reasoning with him. On Monday morning, my mother called. She said Hannah had told her I was upset, but that Victor and Hannah were going through a hard time. She said, "Family doesn't keep score, Miriam. Just let it go." I tried to explain to her that the money was for the horses, for their feed and vet bills, but she just didn't understand. She thought it was a family loan. I drove to the bank that afternoon. The branch manager, Mrs. Thompson, pulled up the transaction log on her screen. She showed me that the transfers were made from my tablet during the exact time I was in the barn. She said that without a police report, they couldn't reverse the transfers. So, I decided to get a police report. I called my accountant, Mrs. Lewis, a 58-year-old woman who was as meticulous as they come. She came to the ranch on Tuesday evening with her laptop and a box of printed bank records. She traced the 3 Zelle transfers. 2 went to Victor's personal account, and 1 went to a joint account he shared with Hannah. From Victor's personal account, she found that $17,000 had been transferred to a defunct real estate company he'd tried to run, and $14,000 had gone to an online sports betting website. The $15,000 in the joint account had been withdrawn in cash in 4 separate transactions of $3,750 each, just under the daily limit. Mrs. Lewis said this wasn't borrowing, it was larceny by unauthorized access. On Friday, I went to the county sheriff's office and asked for Deputy Ryan. I knew him from the equine therapy program, his son was one of my first participants. I laid out all the evidence, the bank statements, the transaction log, Mrs. Lewis's forensic summary, and Jake's written statement confirming my location during the transfers. Deputy Ryan looked through everything and said I'd done half his job for him. He asked if I was sure I wanted to pursue this, considering it was my sister's husband. I told him that if I didn't recover the money, the horses would lose their home. He filed the report and explained the process. The following Tuesday, Hannah showed up at the ranch with Amelia and Ethan. Amelia asked if she could ride Luna, and I let Jake take them to the round pen. Hannah and I stood in the farm store. She said she knew what Victor did was wrong, but she thought I shouldn't have filed a police report against family. She said Victor was desperate, that they were drowning in bills and the mortgage company was threatening to foreclose. She then said, "You have your horses. We have nothing." I looked at her and then out the window at the barn I'd built with my own hands and the horses that depended on me. I told her that 8 years ago, I had nothing but a broken-down barn and a few unwanted horses. I built this ranch without taking from anyone. She grabbed the kids and left without saying goodbye. 3 weeks after the theft, my operating account dropped below $1,000. The feed delivery was due, $6,000 for hay and grain to keep the horses alive through July. I called my feed supplier, Mr. Harris, who'd been delivering to me for years. He agreed to push the payment back 2 weeks, but then I got the vet invoice for $2,700 and the reminder for Jake's bi-weekly salary of $2,300. I marked everything in the farm store down by 20%. I managed to sell about $3,000 worth of items in a week, which covered Jake's salary and part of the vet bill. But I had to postpone the equine therapy sessions for the veterans because I couldn't afford the liability insurance payment. In early July, while cleaning out the storage shed, I found Hannah's denim jacket hanging on a nail. I almost threw it away, but then I checked the pockets. In the right pocket, I found a folded piece of paper. It was a screenshot of my banking app, showing the account balance of $50,347.62, taken at 2:28 p.m. On the day of the reunion, 6 minutes before the first transfer. In the bottom margin, in Hannah's handwriting, it said, "Enough." V says, yes. I realized then that Hannah hadn't just known about the theft, she'd scouted it. She'd checked my balance, confirmed the amount was worth taking, and given Victor the green light. I drove to Mrs. Lewis's office with the paper in a plastic sleeve. She said this changed everything. It was no longer just unauthorized access, it was conspiracy. Mrs. Lewis called me the following week with the full picture. She'd traced all of Victor's outgoing transactions for the past 6 months. He'd been depositing his paycheck, but then transferring large amounts to online betting platforms. By June, he was in a deep hole. The defunct real estate company was just an excuse. My mother's birthday was coming up in August. She called and said she wanted everyone at the party, and that Hannah and I needed to work things out. I told her there was a police report and that the district attorney was reviewing it. She was shocked to learn that the money had been used for gambling. 2 weeks before the party, I put together a folder of all the evidence. It had tabbed sections for the bank transaction logs, the device log from the bank, Jake's affidavit, Mrs. Lewis's forensic summary, Hannah's handwritten note, and a copy of the police report. Mrs. Lewis came to the ranch to review it. She said I could let the DA handle it, but I knew I needed to show my family the truth. On the day of my mother's birthday, I arrived at her small house with the folder in my bag and a handmade gift for her. Victor was already there, standing by the grill, acting like nothing had happened. Hannah was at the kids' table, cutting up hot dogs for Ethan. During dinner, Aunt Sarah asked me how the ranch was doing. She said Hannah had mentioned I was having some money trouble. I stood up, took the folder out of my bag, and started to explain what had happened. I showed the bank statement with the transfers highlighted to Aunt Sarah. I told them that on June 15th, Victor had accessed my banking app on my tablet and transferred $46,000 to his accounts while I was in the barn. Victor tried to brush it off, saying it was a family loan. But I showed him the forensic accounting summary, which traced the money to the defunct real estate company and the sports betting website. When I showed Hannah's handwritten note, she went pale. Victor got angry and started to yell, saying I was trying to destroy the family. Hannah stood up and said she'd told Victor not to take so much, but I asked her how much she was okay with him taking. She said she thought maybe $10,000 for the mortgage, and that she didn't know about the gambling. I pulled out the copy of the police report and said that the district attorney was reviewing formal charges for larceny by unauthorized access. Victor went pale and started to beg me to call it off, saying he'd pay it back. But I told him I don't make mistakes with numbers. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Deputy Ryan and his partner were there. They had a warrant for Victor's arrest. Victor looked at me in disbelief. I told him what he did wasn't borrowing, it was a crime. As Deputy Ryan led Victor away, Hannah was screaming, holding Amelia and Ethan. My mother was standing in the doorway, tears in her eyes. She said she didn't want to lose either of us, but I told her that she'd let the family's lack of boundaries cost me $46,000 of my livelihood. After Victor was taken away, the party was in shambles. But Aunt Sarah came over and put her hand on my arm and said I'd done the right thing. Uncle Tom said he would have done the same if someone had stolen from his business. 6 weeks after the birthday party, the legal dust settled. Victor's attorney negotiated a plea deal. The original felony charge was reduced to a lesser felony in exchange for a guilty plea, full restitution, 200 hours of community service, and 2 years of supervised probation, including mandatory gambling addiction counseling. The restitution would be court-ordered, with his wages garnished. I'd receive $46,000 over 3 years, about $1,278 a month. Hannah filed for legal separation and moved back in with my mother. Victor rented a small apartment on the other side of town. I managed to get through the tough months with a small emergency loan from the credit union, and with the help of Mr. Harris, who extended credit. Jake never missed a day of work. The equine therapy program restarted in September. Deputy Ryan's son, along with a friend, came to the first session. They spent an hour with Luna, and when they left, the son said, "She's still got it," and I think he meant me, too. In October, my mother came to the ranch. She said she should have listened to me, that she didn't know about the gambling. She apologized for always telling me to fix things and for the family doesn't keep score mentality. I forgave her, but I also set a boundary. I told her that my money and my ranch were my business, and that if anyone needed help, they should ask me first. In November, Hannah brought Amelia and Ethan to the ranch again. Amelia asked to ride Luna, and I let Jake help them. After an hour, I went to Hannah. She apologized, and I told her that things would never be the same between us, but that Amelia and Ethan were always welcome. I told her I needed time to heal. By spring, the ranch was thriving again. The restitution payments were coming in on time. I'd paid off half of the emergency loan. I'd taken in 2 more rescue horses, and the farm store was doing better than ever. I'd added weekend workshops, and the local tourism board was promoting the ranch. The therapy program had expanded to 2 groups a week. Jake got a raise, and I hired a new hand, a young woman named Lily who was passionate about horses. I used to think being the strong one in the family meant carrying everyone's burdens. But I've learned that being strong means knowing when to set boundaries and protect what you've built. My ranch survived because I finally learned to stand up for myself and my horses, with steady hands and honest numbers.